And yet, as a preacher's son, I was not always the best liked individual because, Joe, what'd you do that for?
Right.
Or something would happen in school, and guess who got called into the office? The preacher's son.
Yeah.
And what'd you do? Well, a lot of times it wasn't me, but I was in on whatever it was
Yeah,
that happened.
Yeah.
The only one time I got in trouble in junior high was, I never will forget this. I lived in Galveston, Indiana at the time, and the high school boys was throwing racers in the study hall. And I got hit, so I reached down. I know who threw it at me. And I reached down and I drawed back and I throwed that at the boy. At the same time, the principal walked in the door.
Oh my.
Well, you don't have to imagine
No.
what happened.
No.
Joe,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you
Yeah.
up in my office.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I knew what was coming. I'd been caught, you know.
Yeah.
Caught. So, yeah, I got my respectability worked on that day in the
bet.
principal's office.
I bet.
And yet, I just, in sports, I excelled.
Mm-hmm.
I just excelled, but my book learning went the other way. Didn't get good grades, just books didn't mean a lot to me.
Sure.
But I do remember when I was a child of that age that I watched people.
Mm-hmm.
I was really earnest about watching. And then if I didn't know, I'd walk up to this person, tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, what'd you do that for? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, a few times got accused of this little boy. You're always wanting to know what's going on, you know. And people be working and, hey, what'd you do that for?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's that for?
Mm-hmm.
So they would show and tell me,
Right.
and then I could remember that. I had a good memory. My
Sure.
memory worked fine.
Right.
So then I went from Galveston to Clear Creek out here that used to be north of Huntington,
Yes.
and spent my freshman, sophomore, and junior year and senior year at Clear Creek.
Okay.
And many things happened. We had a good basketball team, and I really was a team player.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a good team when I was a senior, and I really give it the best I had. I was a scorer.
Mm-hmm.
I liked to shoot,
Mm-hmm.
but I also liked to jump. And they call me a jumping jack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only 5'9", but I could easily dunk the basketball. That wasn't hard for me to do. Just jump up there. But what I did, again, is back, you practice, and I learned to run and jump and put my head up as high as I could get my head in the net.
Mm-hmm.
The higher I could get my head in the net, the higher I knew my hands. I
Sure.
had long arms, and I didn't have any problem
Sure.
getting the ball.
Right.
So it didn't make any difference how big the boys were beside me. 6'10" is the biggest I've ever played against, and I'd kid him when I stood and played beside him, ask him how the weather was up there.
Mm-hmm.
He'd say it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that time in school was tested mentally.
Sure.
And they made me take my IQ test 3 times because they didn't believe what the score come out. And my IQ at that point in life was only between 65 and 67. And to men's standards, that's mildly mentally retarded.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a very slow learner. And then when I got out of high school, I got a blank piece of paper. And if it hadn't have been for sports, I wouldn't have stayed in school.
Mm.
And yet, I done things, you know, that naturally, how did you do that?
Right.
I understand now how I did it.
Mhm.
It was the Christ in me.
Right.
I had invited Jesus in my heart, in my mind,
Mhm.
in my soul when I was 7 years old. He really took me serious.
That's right. That's right.
Now, regardless of what people saw on the outside,
Right.
because outwardly you didn't know all the things that was going on the inside of it.
True.
And you couldn't see it unless you observed my conduct.
Right.
My conduct at that time was irrational. You never knew for sure what I was going to do. And it all depended on how tired I was. It depended on what somebody had said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my dad would say things from the pulpit. And the worst part was, I'd go out and try and do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I made an effort to try and fulfill what my dad said I could do.
Right.
Even though at times I didn't think I could do it.
Right.
But I'd try.
Right. It's good. It's good. So you go through high school. Then after high school, you met a young lady.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
I met a young lady by the name of Shirley Erickson. I met her at a drugstore. She made one of the best lemon sodas I'd ever tasted in my life. And I've learned, you know, the way into a man's heart sometimes through the stomach.
That's right.
I mean, at least that's what you hear.
Yeah.
Well, that time it took. I really enjoyed that lemon soda. It was
Mhm.
good.
Yeah.
And actually, when we did meet, then I got up enough courage to go back and go to school and be tutored and get my high school diploma, because they were going to take my pictures out of the basketball pictures out of school, and that word got back to me through an English teacher
Mm-hmm.
that lived here in Huntington County. And now I've learned that, thank goodness she said something.
Yes, that's right.
It caused me to be successful and get my high school diploma.
Yes.
But then Shirley and I, we got to going together, and after 3 weeks, I think she was only 16, 15 at the time. I asked her to marry me. Got engaged.
Wow.
And so got out of high school, met her, got engaged,
Uh-huh.
and then I got the opportunity to play Major League Baseball, was invited to the Kansas City Athletics spring training camp down in Huntsville, Texas, and got to go down on the Wabash, the old Cannonball Wabash Railroad.
Yeah.
And then we changed trains in St. Louis, and I went to Huntsville. And it was because when I was at the spring training camp, I did something unwise. My public relations wasn't smooth,
Mhm.
didn't understand. And
Right.
when somebody challenged me, you got a challenge.
Yeah.
Since you're sports-minded too,
Yes.
you understand what I'm
I do.
talking about. And I trust some that might be watching, you know,
Yes.
if they're sports-minded,
Right.
they know what that
It's all or nothing.
It's give it the best you got.
Right.
Well, I got sent home 3 days after the wrong conduct on my part. And then turned to getting married. So my wife and I, we got married on December 25th, 1957.
Hmm.
And she was still a senior in high school. And she went ahead and finished high school